Jasmine, you're up.
Okay, thank you. All right, welcome everyone to Jasmine's First Impression Sports Talk. We have an exciting show for you tonight. We're going to be talking Tannehill and him, not his job to be a mentor to their draft pick, and a little bit of Steelers, and then we're going to get into everything NBA playoffs. So let's get started.
Welcome to Jasmine Pollock's First Impression Sports Talk, the fastest growing sports talk show in the country. And now, here's your host, Jasmine Pollock.
Welcome back to Jasmine's First Impression Sports Talk. To kick off the night, we are going to talk about Tannehill and his press conference. Now, just to give you a little overview of what happened, he was asked about them drafting Malik Willis, the quarterback that everyone's been waiting to see who, if he was going to get drafted, where he was going to go, and he did get drafted to the Tennessee Titans, where Ryan Tannehill resides. Now, he says that it's not his job to mentor this kid. We're both competing for this job. So I know I was upset about that. So we're going to bring in Jeremiah and Cole. So I'm going to start with you, Cole. What was your reaction to Tannehill saying this?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it is not his job to mentor Malik Willis. It really isn't. I mean, this is now pro. I mean, yeah, you play on a team, but at the end of the day, everyone has their own job to do. Malik Willis, I know a lot of veteran quarterbacks go out and they mentor these younger rookies, which is nice to them to bring them along and show them the ropes, just because college football is not the NFL. College football and the NFL are completely different. You are now playing against professional athletes in the NFL. You're playing against linemen who are 6'7" and just freaks of nature. You're playing against linebackers who are freaks of nature. And you're playing against some really smart defensive backs who can play football. So Malik Willis, he might be able to be a good quarterback, in my opinion. I don't think he was worth a first-round pick. I'm happy that the Steelers passed up on him because, in my opinion, I don't think any of the quarterbacks this year in the draft were first-round caliber players.
Yeah, when you looked at this NFL draft, it was more. I feel like it was more defensive, even though you had a lot of good receivers come out, like Chris Olave and Drake London from USC. But back to the Tannehill thing. So with that, and I agree with your point that it's not his job to mentor, but you are like the face of this franchise right now. You are the leader. Of course, you're going to get the starting role, obviously, at being quarterback. But the reason why he is being drafted is because your play the past couple of years. You've had a Super Bowl caliber team that could have went to the Super Bowl and competed for the past 2 years, and you came up short every time, especially against the Bengals, where you had 20 seconds left in the fourth quarter. All you had to do was go down, run the clock out, kick the field goal, you win the game, and you move on to the AFC Championship. No, you go into triple coverage to A.J. Brown and get picked off. And then the rest is history. But Jeremiah, to you. Now, Malik Willis, I do not think is the best of quarterbacks that came out of the draft. I do not think so. But what was your take on Tannehill saying what he's saying? Because we saw Tannehill in Miami. You were rooting for Tannehill at one point. So what are your thoughts?
Well, when it comes to Tannehill and his comments, I got to take a different approach with it. To me, I didn't really appreciate it as much. I do understand that when it came to Tannehill, he has a job to do as a quarterback. He has to do his own thing, and it's the professionalism about him and this new one that he's not his father. But at the same time, you both are going to be on the same team. I know this movie that's called Drumline that always says one band, one sound. So as a whole team, you guys are all one together. Mm-hmm. If one is, struggling off and, he doesn't maybe come off to a point where he wants to, doesn't want to embarrass himself and actually always asking you and everything else, it should take you as Tannehill to just be like, look, I got you, learn from my mistakes so you don't have to make these mistakes. Don't care what's going on within the organization, everything else. If we trying to get to the promised land, I can't be just to myself and let you just sit out there, because the moment and time can come to him. And let's just say Tannehill gets injured. He's out there and doing his thing. And, he's just knowing all what he knows. And, he can get more inside. Tannehill actually has him under his wing. Not saying, he has to, but it should just be a thing that's just on top of your head and just something that you would want for your team to kind of succeed at the end of the day.
Right. And we look at this Titans team. They trade away AJ Brown to the Eagles. Then Julio Jones was a free agent, so he left. They cut him. Now they did draft Burks from Arkansas, and he's a very good receiver. I think he's going to be a very good up-and-coming young receiver. But when I look at this Tennessee Titans team, there's a lot of question marks that I have. How is this team going to look? Of course, Derrick Henry's still back there, and I think he's still dealing with that injury he had, even though he came back for the playoffs, and he looked fairly decent. But we're going to see how they look. When I look at this Tennessee Titans team, I have a lot of questions. What about you, Cole?
Yeah, I got a lot of questions as well. Something that you previously said about Ryan Tannehill being the face of the Tennessee Titans, I disagree. Personally, I think the face is Derrick Henry. That team runs the ball a ton. That's what they do. That's their offense. In my opinion, I am very shaky on Ryan Tannehill. I thought he was very shaky this year. Thought, he just did not, in my opinion, play real well at all. I mean, he's not a terrible quarterback, but to be honest with you, Ryan Tannehill is average at best.
Right.
I don't see him as this face of the franchise type quarterback like a Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert. I pretty much see Ryan Tannehill as like he is a bridge quarterback. The Tennessee Titans do not have a franchise quarterback.
And even with Malik, and like you said, he could have spurts where he does well and they may give him a try, but it's just the future of the Tennessee Titans right now. I feel like that window is closed for them. These past 2 years, they've been dominant. You had AJ Brown dominating at the receiving spot. And of course, you know what Derrick Henry stands for. And we thinking, okay, the Tennessee Titans are going to be a team to mess with. The Tennessee Titans are going to team that compete. And now that window is closed. So we'll definitely see what happens to come, what the Tennessee Titans look like. But in that division, I think the Colts will win that division, being that they acquired Matt Ryan. And just what they have, I think they have a better nucleus than the Tennessee Titans. They're bringing people back. So I like the Colts in this division. But we're going to go into the AFC North. Cole, your Pittsburgh Steelers. Let's talk about the Steelers. So the draft, they draft the quarterback first round. What are your thoughts? Did you like the draft? What do you think?
Yeah, so a couple more things that I want to say about the Tennessee Titans. So first off, I didn't understand the A.J. Brown trade at all. I honestly thought they got fleeced. They literally got fleeced. So we're gonna trade A.J. Brown, a stud wide receiver, and then in return we're just gonna go draft Treylon Burks. A.J. Brown is a stud. He's a great receiver. They could have kept him, and they should have kept him. They have a ton of question marks. Defense, offensive line. I do not like the Tennessee Titans at all. Now going into the Steelers. So I did not want the Steelers to take a quarterback in the first round this year. They just signed Mitchell Trubisky. There is no point in taking a quarterback in the first round, in my opinion, because I don't think any of them are that good. Kenny Pickett had one good season in college. He is not the next coming of Dan Marino. He, like Pitt fans have said, I'm a Penn State fan, but he's just not. He's just not it. He's 25 years old. Do you know who else is 25 years old and around that same age? Joe Burrow.
Yes.
He's a stud already.
Right.
So we're going to take like a rookie quarterback that's 25 years old. And to me, where do you see that prime of his career?
Right.
It's going to be a very shortened prime. So to be completely honest with you, I was totally against the Steelers taking a quarterback in the first round. But the second, third, and fourth round picks, I liked it. I like George Pickens. He is good value. My only question with him is that he's got the off-the-field issues. Okay. He's got to straighten that up. This is now pros. This is not college anymore. It's big-time professional sports. If you act stupid, you're going to get cut. That's just the way how it goes. And that's how all professional sports go. I'm I give the Steelers I'm going to give them a C+.
Okay.
About their draft class. That's kind of what I give them. It wasn't a terrible class. Calvin Austin, I love the pick again.
Mm-hmm.
They can do a lot of fun things with that player. He's a great player. And I like the DeMarvin Leal pick because Cameron Hayward is getting older.
Yeah, agreed.
You got a lot of guys that are getting older on that defensive line. But also, in my opinion, what they should have done in the first round was use to address the big need. The biggest need the Steelers had last year was run defense. Run defense. Did anyone watch that Minnesota Vikings Pittsburgh Steelers game?
Oh yeah, it was terrible.
Dalvin Cook just ran all over him. I mean, he just had wide open gaps, wide open holes, and just running all over them. It was terrible. So that's what they should have done. They got a C+. Hands down, in my opinion, the best draft class in the AFC North, Baltimore Ravens. They killed it.
Yeah.
They killed it. They got Kyle Hamilton, which was great value at that spot. They got Tyler Linderbaum, who was a really good pick.
Yeah.
I was all over the Steelers taking him as well because Mason Cole is just not it as a center.
Right.
He's not Marquise Pouncey. Tyler Linderbaum could be that next Marquise Pouncey, that next big center. I'm okay with taking a center in the first round. I really am. If the player is good and he has that value, take him.
Mm-hmm. And for me, like I love how you mentioned with the Ravens. The only question I had for the Ravens is trading Hollywood Brown. Like that was a whole, like I was not expecting that to happen. And I was just like, wow, that was like Lamar's security blanket, besides the tight end, of course. But to me, I thought the Ravens, they got it back. I thought they drafted well throughout. But when you go back to the Steelers, like I 100% agree with you when it comes to them stacking up in the run defense. When you look at the whole Georgia defensive team, like I know the Packers, we took 2 of those guys in the first round. And honestly, I was surprised that even the Eagles got Davis. I was like, why won't the Steelers go get Davis from Georgia? He's a run-stopping machine. I was like, they need somebody in the middle because, of course, you got T.J. Watt causing issues on the outside, coming and pressuring the quarterback, but they cannot stop the run. And you draft a quarterback. And like you said, you sign Mitchell Trubisky. And I think Trubisky, if you give him the right system and you give him the time and the energy, I think he can be a very solid quarterback in the league. You need defense. The Steelers need defense. Jeremiah, what do you think about that?
Well, when it came to the Steelers, I think their main point, I do have to agree with Cole, you should have been building up when it came to the defensive side. I mean, just look at the first round pick. I understand, you want to start over, especially with a new quarterback, but about the city of Pittsburgh and stuff, like, are they really ready to start over? Because just look how it was just recently.
Mm-hmm.
They just made it to the playoffs, and on the first round, of course, they got to be in the first round, but they made it there. They're so consistent with making and having successful seasons to where you're going to make the playoffs each and every time. They don't want to just start back over to kind of end up in a standstill situation. And I feel like this draft class right here wasn't the best for quarterbacks right here. Yeah. And I feel like they could have aimed for a little bit of the market to see who was really out there when it came to in free agency, in my opinion, because in a draft in their first round, they still had other Georgia linemen out there that you could have got that would have been huge, especially at that early time. And I feel like going for a quarterback, being the first team to go for a quarterback, it wasn't bad, but I don't know how the Steelers fans, especially you, Cole, like, how are you guys going to accept that? Because it's going to be a lot on his shoulders when it comes to bringing into this franchise right here. And if you don't live it up, it's like, is it going to be a move on?
He was homegrown also. So, I mean, he's everything Pittsburgh, grew up a Pittsburgh fan. I get all that. But it's like, when you look at the Steelers, like, you look at the Steelers, they're that gritty, physical team. They've always been like that for decades. And you have in this draft solely defense, especially Georgia's defense was historically phenomenal this past season. And you get these guys coming out, you got to go pounce on one of those guys. But that wraps up this segment. We'll definitely keep an eye on the Steelers, the Tennessee Titans, and all these teams and see how these draft picks work out in the future. But that wraps up this segment. We'll be right back. We're going to take a short break with our sponsors from the Rent the Runway, Smoke Shack, and Fall from the Sky. We'll be right back.
Renting is everything. It's style at your doorstep. Off the runway and into your closet. It's every trend you've been dying to try and every designer you've yet to discover. It's wearing it your way every time and making it count everywhere you go. It's never worrying about what to wear because something new is always coming your way. That's why renting is everything. New styles, top designers, all for a flat monthly fee. Start your subscription at renttherunway.com.
Slow roasted over hickory fire and pulled by hand. This is the way pit pork has always been done. Pulled pork lovers, rejoice. The smoky old days are back at the Smoke Shack. From the creative team that brought you The Browning Project and Dead by Morning comes a new thriller that will change the way you look at white-collar crime forever. Falling from the Sky.
You're watching Jasmine Pollock's First Impressions Sports Talk. Be sure to join Jasmine every week for great conversation on the NBA, NFL, and a wide variety of sports topics. To see past episodes of First Impressions Sports Talk, go to YouTube and search First Impressions Sports Talk. You can connect with Jasmine on LinkedIn by searching Jasmine Pollock. And now,
welcome back to Jazz's First Impression Sports Talk. And those voices that you heard were Kelly Johnson and Dion Hunter. And if you want to get involved in voice acting work, you can contact Leon Thomas at theleonthomasgroup.com. So we're going to wrap up with the last segment of the night, which is the NBA. And this one I've been waiting to talk about because there's so much that happened this today and then this past weekend. So Jeremiah, let's talk about it. We're going to first talk about Joker winning back-to-back MVPs. Now, I'm going to start off by saying Joker's a phenomenal player. I think he's one of the him and Embiid are leading the charge for as big men in this league. But I don't know if I would have went with him to win this MVP. I don't think so. What do you think?
Yes. To me, I would have picked Giannis on the simple fact at the end of the season how big of a stretch that Giannis was heading in, especially when it came to going up against Embiid and beating him and having that winning block, and then going to Denver, and not to mention going to Brooklyn, through those same weeks, and then having, great 40-point games and having those winning baskets or maybe the winning defensive plays and everything else that's like that. But at the same time, I could understand why, the committee would feel this way. When it came to Jokic, this year, he had to do way more than he really did last year. Now, when it came to him having Porter out there before, he didn't have him this year. He didn't even have Murray this year. And for his numbers to kind of, double up this year and get them to the playoffs, they bumped into Curry, and you already know how that thing was going to go.
Of course.
Still, even why, they was getting blown out, he was still putting up huge numbers. But at the same time, I would have still chose Giannis on the simple fact that, he hasn't really hit a downward spiral. Like this guy, he's always there for you, whenever you need him.
I'm going to be honest. I would have went Embiid. When I look at, now I know currently, we're going to talk about the Miami Heat and the Sixers in a few minutes, but when I look at Embiid and what he's done this year, he has dominated. No disrespect to Nikola Jokic, no disrespect to Giannis, none of those guys, because they're phenomenal. But when I look at Embiid, and I've been very hard on Embiid, especially when he first came in the league, because I felt like he wasn't pushing to his limit. Now he is pushing to his limit, and he is dominating everything. That the guy, even last night, he had a phenomenal plays. Phenomenal. He was spectacular. And of course, James Harden, he got it going, but we'll talk about that in a minute. But when I look at the MVP, I think it has to change. This has to change because if you look at it, both Embiid and Giannis are still in the playoffs right now. Joker is at home. Regardless of, how phenomenal he did in the regular season, of course, it's a regular season award, but I think that needs to change. It's all about what you do in the playoffs. And so far in his playoff career, Joker has not delivered. He has not delivered. Simple. He has not made it to a conference final. And when we talk about grace, when we talk about phenomenal players, it's all about getting to that next level, competing for championships and competing with the best of them. And to me, not saying he can't. He can very much so. Of course, they missed Murray and different things like that. But you have to make it to the next step. You're the back-to-back MVP. You have to make a step. And I think, honestly, we've seen it with James Harden a couple years ago when he was winning the MVP, but you get out of the playoffs. You're out the first, second round. And it's like, okay, well, what does that even mean? What does this award even mean? You're at home. You're sitting. You're going home. You're being booted out of the playoffs. So to me, I would have went Embiid with this because just from what I'm seeing right now, Embiid has been phenomenal the whole year. Of course, I think it would have been neck and neck between him and Giannis, and it's nothing to take away from Joker. But to me, honestly, I would have went Embiid. But let's go to the 76ers and the Miami Heat. Jeremiah, I know you're not happy. The series is tied. What are your thoughts? Let them out.
So this is me coming as a Heat fan. Being up 2-0, I'm going to start off by giving the Philadelphia Sixers some props. I'm going to give them props to start off because I can be a rude fan and go there, but I'm not. I'm going to see and have where respect is due because not to mention, just like you just alluded to Joel Embiid, he brings a presence. Mm-hmm. You've seen when Joel Embiid not being out came to those first two games. James Harden and them, they're not really the playmakers to kind of have and carry your team just like how Harden used to do in the Rockets. Their shots wasn't falling when it came to them playing in Miami, that big pressure that was on the line. But the moment that Embiid came back, it's just his presence just as a 7-footer. Our biggest person that we have on our team is Bam, and he is 6'7". And you can see the difference. So, we have to keep double teaming. And with those, opens up the perimeter for Harden and the rest of them to kind of get comfortable, and them to feel comfortable with that confidence. And you can just see. Now, and of course, in the game 3, Miami did beat themselves up. Nothing was falling. And, we got into a lot of foul trouble because that's the thing that Philadelphia has their bread on is when it comes to their fouls. Yes. And many people can speculate how they don't like it and everything else, but I'm not too big of a fan of it. But at the same time, that's just their tactic that they do. Always, when it came to these last 2 games, Miami had Philly in the bonus early times of the fourth quarter, like 9 minutes inside the fourth quarter. And you would think even if it's ticky-tack stuff, it's all about just the display, and that's just how the presence is just there. And, of course, the shots weren't falling down, especially at their home place. And I feel like them going back to Miami is going to be a great series, and this can go to even 6 or 7.
Right. And when I look at, of course, I'm rooting for the Heat, but like you said, Embiid is a presence maker. That's why I said before I would have gave the MVP to him because of just his presence and what he brings to the game. I mean, he is their best player on that team. Of course, there's no disrespect to James Harden, but okay, everyone's raving about James Harden having that 30-point game last night. Okay, but that wouldn't have happened if the attention wasn't on Embiid. You get
exactly.
And
that's his presence.
Exactly. Embiid brings that pressure like, okay, we got to get on Embiid. He's their best player. He's the face of the franchise right now. But of course, Harden, there's no attention. So, of course, he can have one of those games where, okay. And that's why I think this team is a lot better with Embiid on the floor. Now, if Embiid was still injured, he didn't play, I genuinely think the Heat would have swept them. Genuinely, because I don't have faith in James Harden. And I think, honestly, Embiid is going to save this man's career. I genuinely believe that. And I feel that when you look at the Heat is a very small team. Like you said, Bam is their biggest player at 6'7". Embiid is a monster. That guy's a giant. And then when you look at it, Danny Green is on fire. Like, I mean, for so long, we've been so irritated with him with the Lakers. Like, okay, where's Danny Green? We brought you here. He's 1 of 17, but then he can go on a night where he's just on fire from 3 and just.
But Jasmine, this is also a thing. I do have the Heat in 6 though, because I'm gonna tell you my reason for it, and I do agree with Mr. Stu as he calling.
Yeah.
Like when it came to the Miami Heat, although they were shooting terrible behind the 3-point line, you know, shooting 20% or 30% when it came to them being in Philly, they still would lose within, like, in the first game, of course, there was a block at the end. But this last game that they just had just yesterday, they lost by, was it like 5 or 7 points?
Yeah.
Even on their worst shooting day. So I worry for Philly if Miami gets hot. How were you going to handle those times? How are you going to handle them back? Because these last games, they've been ahead through these games, and the Heat have been off in everything else. But what happens when that switch comes on and that pressure comes on them? How are they going to react in those times?
If I'm not mistaken, the Heat is second in the league in 3-point shooting.
Yes.
And that is scary. When the Heat is on fire, they're unbeatable. Like, I mean, honestly, like when everyone is hitting from all cylinders, of course you got Tyler Hero coming off the bench, and that kid can play with anybody. That the Heat have to get the shooting better, because what Embiid are going to do, put them in foul trouble. Oh, they can't guard me. They're smaller than me. Bam can't guard me. Nobody can guard me. So he's going to get in there. And, of course, you have the Danny Greens, the James Hardens, those guys that are going to start lighting you up on the perimeter and doing things because the attention is now on Embiid. So we'll definitely see how the series is going to go. I'm still going with the Heat. I still think Heat are the better team, obviously. But we're going to see. I hope the Heat got to put them out, though. They got to, don't leave them lingering around and hanging around, because you know when these teams start hanging around, they get hope that they can come in and beat someone.
Exactly.
But we're going to go into the Western Conference. Another series was tied, and that's between the Mavs and the Suns. Now, I'm one of those people, I thought Dallas was in trouble. I thought Dallas was going to get swept. I was like, man, I don't know if Dallas is going to make it out of this one. But Luka and those guys went home and said, you know what, not on our court. What do you think about that? And we're going to talk about Luka and his flopping, because I have a lot to say about that also.
Oh, yes. When it comes to Dallas right now, what did the commentators and everybody say, even I said, it just can't be Luka making these buckets. All the other ones have to step up. And you just seen their point guard, forgot his name, but in that first series against Utah, while Luka was out, he had dominant games. He was a key factor for them to make it to this level right here. So Luka is bringing you big numbers. You guys got to still come with him. And I feel like them going back home, grabbing that energy back. And it just tells you a lot of things that you see about the Suns as well. You've seen them so much throughout the year at number one throughout the teams, wrecking all these teams, you know, having these dances before, you know, having that confidence. Book earlier, they try to talk because they know they can blow you out. Mm-hmm. But the moments that it does get bad, I see the difference between Aiden. He doesn't get too aggressive, you know, at all. When it comes to Devin Booker, he's going to still get you buckets. But at the same time, he'll turn to the Booker that was when they was not a good team. Yeah. And then Chris Paul, when it came to him,
he can't always keep carrying them. You know
exactly. And even when it comes to Chris Paul too, these last 2 games have been one of his worst games. Yes. The last game he had, he was fouled out, 6 fouls. And he had like, I think 5 turnovers. Right. The game before that one, he had a career high in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. And a lot of these things add up, and a lot of these things, you know, I hate to say it, but it's just something that just happens to Chris Paul whenever he gets to, you know, a perfect thing going for him. But it's going to be an interesting season. Whoever wins this next game, I feel like, is going to tell you who is going to be in the driver's seat.
And you mentioned a player that I'm really disappointed with, and I thought he would take a step, is DeAndre Ayton. When I saw him against Giannis, of course, Giannis, you know, beat him up a little bit, or pretty much the whole series, and he dominated him. And I would think, okay, DeAndre Ayton, he's a big guy. He can play. Not saying he can't, but I would expect him to be a lot more aggressive. and be physical. I'm not seeing that from him like that what we should be seeing from him. And when I look at the Suns, of course, the Suns have been a dominant team the whole season, had the best record in the league, the number 1 seed overall. But something about them, I cannot say, are they like a super powerful team? Like, you're just like, man, I'm scared to play these guys.
I mean, just like what I said, when it comes to them being behind, they're so used to being ahead. They're so used to having that comfortable lead, and to where they're only thinking like, oh, I only got to focus on Luka. You got these other ones that's getting hot right now. And that's what makes Dallas so good. And I hate that they don't have Tim Hardaway Jr. out there too, because he's been injured, but they still, making things happen, under this. But of course, I don't agree with all the calls, because I know sometimes it can be due to flopping and everything else about calls and stuff, always whining to the refs. That's the thing I don't like in the NBA right now. But at the same time, I do understand it.
Yeah, but it's just for DeAndre Ayton, he has to be more physical. I think if he gets physical, I think the Suns are pretty much unbeatable. But that's, of course, Booker has to be consistent. I think Booker's almost there at superstar. He's a star, but I don't think I'm still needing to see a lot more from him in order for me to give him that title. But we're gonna go to Luka. Now, I like Luka. I think Luka's a great player. He flops too much and wants so many calls. And it's so irritating to me, because it's like, okay, you're not going to get every call. You're not going to get every whistle or anything. You're not going to be able to go to the free throw line. You need to just, hey, go in there, play your game like you've been playing. And he looks, every time he goes to the lane or makes a bucket or anything like that, he's looking at the refs.
Dude, I mean, Jasmine, look at this. Jasmine, look at this. Every single time. That's why I do not like some of the things that goes on in NBA today. Yes. Every single time a person drives in or something, and when it comes to an NBA game, everybody's always looking at the refs, looking for a foul call, complaining about something, or something is always being reviewed. I thought we was playing basketball at the end of the day. You guys are grown men. Now I'm going to understand some things can get out of hand to where, hitting in the head or certain things that you do need to look at. But if it's just like, hard playing, because this is playoffs, you would think that these games will be lasting maybe like 2 hours. It goes to 4 hours for how many times they be reviewing plays right now. Mm-hmm. And this thing goes on. And for Luka, you can't do that all the time, because then you pick up a tech each game. Yeah. And then not to mention, you're not going to get everything just because you complain. Right. You're not.
And when you look at it, like, would you agree this past weekend, actually in this playoff, there's been a lot of officiating calls. There's a bunch of stuff going on that's just questionable, and then things that aren't called. I mean, it's just, I hate when in a game where officiating gets involved so much. Like, I love when players play, even the NFL, like, let them play, not to be not to where it's dirty or anything like that, but playing aggressive and being physical. I want to see that. But in this league today, especially in the NBA, it's like everything, every touch, every little tap is a foul, and it's so irritating. And then some calls don't get called that should be fouls. You know what I mean? It's just bad altogether. And then you have people getting ejected. You got people getting suspended from obviously the Grizzlies, that guy with that. But it's just a lot of things that are happening, and I just don't like that the officiating is getting so much heavily involved. And I remember today I was watching Undisputed, and Shannon even mentioned that, talking about he's never seen throughout his lifetime the officials, people knowing officials' names, like they're trending. It was like, usually the officials are on the side, they're just reffing their
Scott Foster.
Everyone knows Scott Foster. Everyone knows a lot of these guys because of the bad calls they make or the calls they do not make. And it's unfortunate, because I want to see these guys play. I want to see these guys play to the best of their ability. Not, of course, getting injured or somebody getting hurt or anything like that, but playing aggressive. That's what sports is about. Not, okay, one hit, oh, that's a foul, or somebody's flopping. It becomes a clown show at this point. It becomes a clown show. But that wraps up tonight's show. Thank you, Jeremiah. It was a pleasure talking to you about this. I'm sure we're going to see a lot more bad officiating deeper into the playoffs for sure.
Yes.
See you guys next week on Jasmine First Impression Sports Talk. Thank you, Leon. Thank you, Jay, for the production. We'll see you guys here next week at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Good night.